Alright, it's time for the Australian Grand Prix observations, or at least my own observations. So, number one is there are a pair of expensive Canadians on the grid. These two are very expensive. Now, their antics are not going to be tolerated all that long in a budget cap era. Because, you see, I'll get to the budget cap later, but budget capped teams cannot tolerate these antics. Because the budget cap is instituted by the rule makers. So, the team is actually limited to X amount of money until they go past, what was the number, 20 races or 21 races? Until you actually get to your 20th race of the calendar, then, you get like an extra million per race off the back of that for spare parts, I'm assuming. But that is interesting that they are so budget capped that, come end of the season, as soon as we start hitting 20 plus races, we're going to start giving you, a little extra petty cash just to spend on repairs so we can actually finish the season, right? So now you've got these expensive Canadians, they're wrecking cars, okay? Latifi is getting a reputation for this very quickly, but they're wrecking cars, and quite frankly, both drivers are just incredibly stupid in that moment. Like, it's just incredibly stupid. Firstly, Latifi, you've let the guy through. Just stay behind until you're at the faster part of the circuit. Just stay behind. And Stroll, there was no reason for him to move across like that, but I can't really blame him for that. Why would he expect the other Canadian to just immediately come back past? It just wouldn't make sense, especially on account of when he's come across him, he's literally stopped on the side of the track. So this is just incredibly stupid from both these drivers. Latifi gets the bulk of the blame. He really has to fix up. There's a detail about the budgets, right? Crashes early in the season can kill upgrades later in the season. Because you have to spend money repairing the current car. Now you're going to run out of money and not be able to, you're going to be 2 million short of that upgrade later at the end of the season. Anything could happen. Observation number 2, there was the swag ban. I'm calling it the swag ban. I just like how it sounds. They banned Hamilton's swag in an attempt to rattle him. Really, does it matter? No. Do they have like some kind of valid reasons for doing it on safety grounds? Yeah, I guess you could say they kind of sort of do, but it wasn't really necessary. Of course, it is just an attempt to rattle Hamilton. Don't second guess yourself on that. It is just an attempt to rattle Hamilton, because he's not competing for this championship anymore, right? So they got to find other ways to get into his psyche. Just is what it is. These are the games they play. The drivers, I'm pretty sure Hamilton is involved in this too. The drivers were more rattled by the underwear rules that they came up with. I'm not entirely sure what they are. You probably can't wear your lucky boxes or something now. You got to wear the FIA mandated fireproof underwear. That's just what I'm assuming it is. From the little that I've read about this, I didn't really find it that important a thing to get into. But it is worthwhile to note that they have instituted a swag ban. Alright, now that's interesting, because it means that they'll use pretty much any avenue that they can. So that's worth noting. So Verstappen's safety car hijinks has been revisited. And I find it quite laughable that they've actually gone and revisited it. So, I'm in agreement with Jolyon Palmer. Jolyon Palmer gave an analysis about this after Jeddah, and he's quite good at the analysis desk, way better than he was behind the wheel. But I guess his time behind the wheel has given him some pretty good knowledge to do that job. But Palmer, he's brilliant behind the desk, and I agree with him in that I didn't see anything wrong with Verstappen's safety car restarts. I don't really see anything wrong with that. Now the question for me is, now that they've deemed it an illegal move, an illegal play to make during a Grand Prix, Now that they've done that, why couldn't they do that in the off season? I'm just curious, why couldn't they do that in the off season? Because of course this Abu Dhabi footage, surely it was reviewed extensively, right? Surely. So surely they would have seen like, oh, Verstappen's doing this thing in the safety car, over safety car restarts, should we police it or do we just let it be? And they've seemingly let it be, and now they've reneged on that, and I can only come to one conclusion, and that's because Hamilton isn't challenging for the championship. Now, why would they renege on this ruling just on account of Hamilton not challenging for the championship? Because Verstappen doesn't need that tool, right? And Leclerc doesn't need that tool. Like, Leclerc doesn't need it, he doesn't do it. But Verstappen, he doesn't need that tool because Hamilton, he's not challenging for the championship. You see? And I'm pretty sure they've looked at this Mercedes car extensively in the back, and they've come to a conclusion that it's going to take a while for them to get on top of their issues. They'll be serviceable at a few weekends, at a lot of weekends, I should say. But they're not going to usurp Red Bull and Ferrari until maybe, back end of the season, and then they'll start running interference on the championship. But we'll get to that. We'll get to championship interference late stage of the season, perhaps in another video, maybe on this one, I don't know, but we'll get to that. But now, just getting back to the safety car hijinks being revisited. Now that it's been deemed illegal, why couldn't it have been deemed illegal last season? Seriously, we have to ask this question. We have to seriously ask this question. Now, of course, I gather Ferrari might have had something to say about it after reviewing the Bahrain and Jeddah footage. They might have had something to say about it. They might have poked and prodded at someone, with their horse taser. They might have, with their horse rod, their cattle rod over there. They might have prodded someone and said, "Hey, get this thing off my circuit." They might have done that, and kudos to them if they've done that. But yeah, this is very strange optics for the FIA. Very strange, because the only reasonable conclusion is, well, they let Verstappen do that because it was compromising Hamilton. So it's money, right? Hamilton can deal with it. He's the most complete driver of all time. He can deal with it. But Leclerc, no. This is our star boy Leclerc. You don't treat him like that, Anyway, I'm gonna get too controversial here. So is this Adrian Newey's last hurrah? This is my next note. I've lost track of the numbers now, but I will timestamp these. It is what it is. But is this Adrian Newey's last hurrah? Because, the car is technically excellent. I mean, look, I've been watching F1 for a long time. I've not seen a car that rides the road quite like this Red Bull that Newey has produced. I have not seen that. In all my years of watching F1, I have not seen that. I've seen very good cars, some produced by Newey, some not produced by Newey, but I have not seen a car that does what this Newey car does. I have not seen that. So he's done something quite genius here, right? He's clearly just done something genius. Now, the only question mark around the car, because the car is so convincing out the box, right? The only question mark about the car now is, which direction do you actually take it for development? And if you start trying to throw downforce on the car, do you upset because the car looks like it's tuned in a very narrow window, but that narrow window it makes that narrow window work so well, right? So now when you start adding downforce onto the car, do you upset that tuning? Are you gonna now start getting the Red Bull porpoising like the Mercedes or the Ferrari when they start adding downforce? Who knows? But right now the car is tuned to perfection. The way Red Bull can run that car so low, it is. I do have some question marks about parc fermé rules. I do have some question marks about these, because supposedly all the cars enter parc fermé upon going into qualifying. In qualifying, all the cars are like scraping their backsides on the road. And then come the race, they just magically just gain some ride height. Now, I'm just going to assume that that's done via tire pressures, I'm just going to assume that rather than get super conspiratorial on it right now. But yeah, that's a very strange one. But either way, Newey's built a fantastic car. Let's see how it holds up over the season. And of course, they're going to have reliability issues for other reasons. We'll get to that as well. That's another point in this thing. But anyway, Newey's last hurrah. Is this car Newey's last hurrah? It just might be. It just might be. The missing panacea for Mercedes is the next point, right? The missing panacea for Mercedes. I mean, at this point, I don't know if people would agree, or maybe this could be too controversial, but it's Mercedes' own excellence over running a race weekend that's actually keeping them relevant right now. This is how bad I believe the car is. They're making the car look like it's nearly there, and it's not really nearly there. They just have a driver pairing that is that good, and engineering expertise that is that good. They just don't have the knowledge right now. But they're being excellent. They are producing results. They are actually on top of the constructors championship, if I'm not mistaken. So here's the only observation about Mercedes for now. The car is bad right now. The drivers are excellent. The team is excellent. The car is bad right now. Here's an observation. Be wary of this package of team and drivers. Be very wary of them, because as soon as they unlock the car, I mean, they might upset everyone's pace. They really might. But that's assuming they actually unlock the car without then having to just go for a complete redesign on their packaging or what have you. Anyway, look out for Mercedes. They are a very interesting proposition for the season. The car that looked too good to fail. Oh, that Ferrari. I swear to God, when you see that Ferrari just sitting still in the garage, on the jacks even, the car already looks fast. It looks like, that whole cliche of, you get a poster of a car and you put it on your wall, and the car looks like it's moving, and it's moving fast, even though it's standing still. And it's not a motion picture that they've taken, it's just a still picture. That's the Ferrari all the time. All the time. I mean, if there's any one advert for Formula One that you can put out this season, just put that Ferrari. Just put a picture of that Ferrari there. Yeah, this thing, it turns wheels in anger in the sport. Look at it. Do you want to see what it looks like going fast? Well, go watch the weekend. So this is the car that just looks too good to fail. If Ferrari ever arrive at a race weekend and the car isn't good, I mean, it's going to be a huge disappointment. It's going to be huge. The car looks too good. The car just frankly looks too good. It's too sexy a car for it to have a bad weekend. It's not even like about the technical expertise that's gone into the car anymore. It's just, there's like a metaphysical standard here. The car is just too pretty to fail. And F1 is this type of sport where, the better your car looks, the better it will be. And the Ferrari is the best looking car on the grid. Maybe some people might argue the Red Bull or the Mercedes. I mean, the Mercedes have the most ambitious concept on the grid, for sure. I wouldn't say it's the best looking, but it's the most ambitious concept. The Red Bull, while being technically excellent, it also has a rather textbook presentation. I mean, the Red Bull, if you look at it now that a few races have gone through, their car looks like it's kind of at the end point of what you would expect following the rules in a traditional design sense would produce, right? That's what it looks like. And one has to question, is there any room for like actual creativity on that, or do you have to now actually change concepts completely on the car? And now Red Bull have to start chasing the zero pods or the sexy pod. I'm just gonna call them the sexy pods on the Ferrari. Goddamn, I don't know what else to call them. But There's an interesting thing about the Red Bull and the Ferrari that I've noticed from this weekend, and is that the Red Bull the car doesn't really have personality. You know, it's kind of you put it on the track, it's a blank slate. It will hug the road, it will hug the corners, it will do all that stuff that you want it to do, but it doesn't really have a personality. And by that I mean, well, when comparing it to the Ferrari does step out at this or that corner. You know, it does step out. But that step out is kind of predictable to the drivers. It's like, okay, I know the back end is going to be a little loose coming into this corner. It's just how the car behaves. And then they adjust for that. Now, on the Red Bull, the car doesn't really have personality. So only when the driver messes something up does the car mess up the circuit. So we saw this with Verstappen, penultimate corner at Melbourne. He kept messing up there. His qualifying laps, he messed up. In practice, he was messing up. He kept messing up there. And that's not the car doing that. You know, people might want to blame the car on this. Newey's done excellent here, so you can't actually blame the car. Yeah, we'll talk about the engine. We'll get to that. We'll talk about the power unit and all of that. But as far as handling and the design spec of the car, it's perfect from Newey. All right. So when you see the Red Bull step out under any of the drivers' command, when you see the Red Bull step out, that's driver error. It's always going to be driver error with this Red Bull until they do something different with their car. All right, because the car doesn't have personality. The car isn't, just doing a snap on the driver or something. The car is nailed onto the track, quite literally. All right. So I just thought that was an interesting comparison to make. And this might be like some petty shade or something, but if Hamilton was in that Red Bull, that lockup on the penultimate corner, like, that doesn't happen with Hamilton. I'm actually pretty sure Hamilton would be 2/10 faster than Verstappen in the car, simply because the Red Bull is the type of car that it doesn't want to be hassled around the track, right? It wants to be guided around the track. You guide it around the circuit. The Ferrari, you hassle around the circuit, and the great thing about the Ferrari, right? This is the personality of the car. The great thing about it is it wants to be hassled around the track. It wants to go faster. It wants to break the lap record. It wants to do all of that. The Red Bull, it just wants to be guided there. It wants to find itself there. A weird way to. It wants to find itself there, but it has the ability to just find itself there in a race-winning position, right? It has that ability. But yeah, that's just my weird comparison between the cars, at least the Ferrari and Red Bull. There is a naivety about this Aston Martin project that Daddy Stroll is bankrolling. I don't call him Daddy Stroll because, of course, he's got his son Lance Stroll. He's bankrolled his son's career. No, of course, his son isn't the worst driver. He's got some pretty good results over his time in F1. He's not the worst driver, but he's not the smartest, as demonstrated by some earlier incidents. Here's the thing: if Daddy Stroll is serious about making Aston Martin, I guess he's just branding it as Aston Martin, right? Well, if he's serious about making his team title challengers, like he said, and of course I just assume everyone says this, right? Even if they don't actually believe they're gonna get there. But if he's serious about making them title challengers, then he is going to have to make some difficult decisions regarding his driver lineup. And he's going to also have to make some difficult decisions regarding his actual engineering side of things, because it's just not good enough. And there was some hype around this Aston Martin car in pre-season testing. There was some hype around it. And 3 races in, the car just looks unremarkable, completely unremarkable. I mean, it's easy to forget that they're there, quite frankly. So it's just a very naive project. By contrast, Alpine actually look like, if they play their cards right, if they run their development just right, they do look like they might actually challenge for a championship sometime in this formula. Now, 3 years, 4 years from now, we're still racing this formula. They might be one of the challenging cars. So it's just a short little comparison of these two projects. I mean, Alpine, they've got a talented young driver, Ocon, and they've got seasoned veteran, Alonso. Now, of course, they've tried the same thing at Aston Martin, but Stroll is he's just not it, unfortunate. He was never really it. He's just an interesting driver. I mean, he would be an interesting... he would be a worthwhile teammate to an actual... He would be a worthwhile teammate to a Verstappen, let's say. To Verstappen, to Hamilton, He would be useful in that regard. He wouldn't exactly be the perfect number 2 that you want. Right? He's definitely not Coulthard level of driver. Not even close. But Ocon is not that. Ocon actually has champions potential. Begrudgingly, I have to admit. He does have champions potential in him. It's just that I question his discipline. I mean, there was that Brazil incident with Verstappen. He was completely out of line there, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, the Alpine project looks a lot more... Well, the Alpine project actually looks convincing as compared to the Aston Martin project, which looks naive. Now, sure, there have been difficulties coming into the season, but I don't think... Seeing what I've seen from their car, from their team, I don't think they're gonna be a convincing challenger at any point. So, yeah, unless things change in a big way there. I understand it's the previous Force India team. They had some pretty good expertise there, but I mean, you have to shift with the times a bit. The knowledge required now is different, and they probably just don't have it. There is something of a duel of the fates developing at McLaren. And Ricciardo really only has himself to blame for putting himself in this situation. It is all his own doing. All his own doing. This is one of those situations where it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And against Verstappen, he probably would have had a shot. I mean, Verstappen has a few rough edges around him. Yeah, a few rough edges around him, I'll say. Norris has fewer rough edges around him. So this was going to be difficult for Ricciardo. Always. So now his career, if he loses, if he loses convincingly, I should say, in this duel of teammates with Lando Norris, that's what his career will boil down to. Yeah, he's got some wins with Red Bull and podiums and good results and podiums at Renault. Did he win at Renault? I can't recall. But all of that comes undone if there's this new young hotshot who just completely trounces you, especially over a season. So this is make or break for Ricciardo. This is make or break for him. At least with when he was partnered with Verstappen at Red Bull, at least there was the narrative of, Verstappen is just such a preternatural talent. Like, how could Ricciardo possibly match him once he really gets his footing in this Formula One thing? There was at least that. Now this is just Lando Norris. Now, yes, Norris does have champions potential, but it's not as obvious as some of the other drivers on the grid, right? You could see him being like a Jenson Button type of champion. He gets one. He finds a way to one championship over his career. You could see that happening for him. Definitely. I expect it to happen. And one would have expected the same thing for Ricciardo. And if he loses in this season against Norris in a big way, that's it. It's over. He might not see Vegas. You see that joke he made about, I was going to retire until this Vegas Grand Prix? He might not see Vegas. And Norris, you see, here's the thing. The flash in the pan for Norris was Russia. You see, he almost won the Grand Prix. He's smarter from that experience. 100%. He is more complete as a driver because of that experience, and he has learned his lessons from that experience. So Ricciardo's up against it this season. Alright? Any Ricciardo fans, you best hope your boy pulls it out. The DRS zone was removed. This is another talking point from this thing. The weekend started off with 4 DRS zones, and the race ran 3 DRS zones. Now, I should give them credit first on actually removing the DRS zone. I do ponder the decision to first have a 4th DRS zone. You know, that to me is worth pondering, because from my understanding, the new rules, the new regulations were supposed to make the racing closer, right? Make it easier to overtake. So you shouldn't need to be adding DRS zones onto circuits if the racing is going to be closer, tighter anyway. I mean, it's just an interesting observation. We'll see what they do with the rest of the season. Hopefully they don't go DRS crazy on some circuits. I mean, yeah, but they probably will. I can see them testing limits. I mean, Braun is gonna probably come up with some harebrained idea for like 8 DRS zones in Monza or something. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Now, I've made comments about Red Bull's impending reliability woes for the season. I do have a video on that. It was my first video on this channel. Well, it's not the first video on this channel, but it is the first video in this vein of the channel. But anyway, so I don't know if other people caught this. On the formation lap, it was quite interesting. Red Bull left dry ice in Verstappen's side pods. They left the dry ice actually in the side pod. Now, this has been done before. The last time that I've really seen that being done extensively was like, you know, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, which was where it was pretty much your engine just has to last you the race distance. You know, that was the theme back then. Nowadays, your engine has to last you 5 Grand Prix, and they're already packing dry ice into the thing before the race starts. You know, Verstappen was driving, you know, he did the formation lap with dry ice still melting in the side pod. They didn't leave it there by accident. They purposely left it there because they needed any type of cooling to get over the line. So they're going to struggle with reliability. And I knew the second I saw that dry ice, I had to actually rewind the live TV. Like, what, did I just see dry ice in the side pod? Oh, yes, there's dry ice in the side pod. Oh, yes. And fascinatingly enough, Australia, it wasn't the hottest day. It wasn't the hottest day by any stretch of the imagination. So they're gonna have to make some sacrifices on that car. They're either gonna have to make some sacrifices, or they're gonna have to pull out the engine genius that they pulled out last season. And I've already covered, I don't think they'll be able to do that. But we'll see what happens. I mean, sincerely, being completely honest here, I am quite surprised that Verstappen did in fact retire. You know, I thought Red Bull would have. I thought Red Bull for sure, Red Bull powertrains would have for sure gotten on top of whatever the issue is. Now, of course, they could get on top of one issue and another issue springs up. It's probably what's going to happen for the whole season. I mean, Bahrain, I believe it was hydraulics. Whatever they say, I believe it was hydraulics. Now here in Melbourne, it was something more directly engine related. And we'll see as the season goes on. It will be different things. We've seen a Toro Rosso. Calling it Toro Rosso. We've seen an AlphaTauri have an electrical failure. So we've seen all sorts of reliability issues from Red Bull. So that tells me that it's the actual hands on the engine that have lost their edge a bit. Why have they lost their edge? Oh, it's anyone's guess. But this will be an interesting one to keep observing for the season. Ted Kravitz, that bad man, he is the inconvenient commentator. Through and through. When the safety car came out and Hamilton got caught out by the safety car, oh my days. He is the inconvenient commentator. He is going to be a very fun ride this season. I wonder if the bigwigs will censor him. I mean, we can only wait and see on that. We can really only wait and see on that. But yeah, he seems to be quite relishing this role of the inconvenient commentator. He's going to keep on mentioning Abu Dhabi. He's not going to stop. And he might even mention Brazil if there's a situation where it's relevant, or even Monza if there's a situation where it's relevant, or Silverstone. You know, he might go anywhere. But it depends. He might get the leash put on him and get told to zip his lips about last season. He might just get told that because, of course, the actual commentators. Well, it wasn't Brundle. I forget the other man's name. I really do. I always forget his name. But oh well. But the other man then that's there. He said he would just like to move on from Abu Dhabi, and I think that's a whistleblower, if ever there was one, right? It sounds actually like he's advising Ted, just shh, let's not talk about Abu Dhabi, all right? Just shh, let's not talk about it. Pretend it didn't happen. The result is the result, and let's just move. Will that stand? Oh, I don't know. I have an idea, but I don't know. I think it all depends on what exactly Mercedes bring to Barcelona. If they've got a notable upgrade, then I think Abu Dhabi will be forgotten about. If they do not, then yeah. Ted's gonna be that guy. Ted is gonna be that motherfucking guy. It's gonna be a ride. I mean, either way, whatever happens, it's gonna be a ride with Ted. He's on a truther scheme for this season, and I'm quite interested to see where he goes with it. And the last notable observation, well, at least to me anyway, we could get to Carlos Sainz's weekend, but I mean, there's a separate video for that, most likely. But the last observation from the weekend, as Mercedes, drive away from Melbourne, leading the Constructors' Championship with what I would deem as a bad car, Hamilton is smiling in the post-race presser. It's under a mask. I can see he's smiling. He can't hide it. He's got the biggest smile on his face, and I know why. Because Verstappen's out the race. And he might have heard some rumblings beneath the waters, and he's on the same type of tip that I am, where he's going to now assume that, Red Bull powertrains have also lost that edge, that engine edge they had, because they just don't have the same motivation. I mean, they came here to slay the dragon that was Lewis Hamilton, and I thought they were doing it with sword and shield, and then Massey pulled out the shotgun. So well done to Mercedes. They are leading the Constructors' Championship while not having a good car, which that's quite impressive. That's actually quite impressive. And they got Hamilton smiling again. He was smiling so big he had to try hide it. Because they were going to ask, why are you smiling so big? I tell you what, the mental warfare is on 11 between Mercedes and Red Bull this year. It is on 11, And this is another thing that Horner and Red Bull and Verstappen, they were not ready for this type of smoke, because the mental warfare has been on 11. I mean, like, Russell and Hamilton could drive past any car on the circuit in practice, and they'll actually keep a white bit. Come a Red Bull, they know it's a Red Bull. Of course, someone must be telling them it's a Red Bull, or they just keep track of the cars around the track. Drivers have capacity for this, and they just get a little bit riskier with it. Red Bull's on a slow lap. Well, let me get a little bit risky. Getting past him here. And then boom, it catches the cameras, and then we're talking about Red Bull getting in the way of Mercedes in practice and qualifying. They're doing the mental warfare. This is just desserts as far as I'm concerned. Okay? Red Bull wanted the smoke, they've got the smoke now. They've got the smoke. And Mercedes are up for the smoke. They were doing the honorable thing this whole time, and the gloves have just come off now. They just decided to take the gloves off, and I'm here for it. I'm here all season for it. It's going to be one hell of a season, I tell you what. Oh, last point of the video. Godspeed, Charles. Enjoy your championship. This is going to be a good championship, my boy. Godspeed. Alright, and closing points, aside from telling you to go off and enjoy your day, is Leclerc is looking imperious this season, and I guess so is the Ferrari. Alright, Leclerc is looking imperious. He's looking like the fastest driver on the grid this season. I mean, whether that's due to what machine is under him, or whether that's due to his own form, doesn't really matter at this point. He is just the fastest driver on the grid. And the Ferrari, the car likewise, it looks imperious. So yeah, I expect to be talking about a lot of Leclerc victories this season. The odd Verstappen one, of course. Red Bull aren't gonna get the reliability thing completely wrong at each race, but yeah, and a hopeful Hamilton win somewhere in there. We'll see if it happens. Anyway, enjoy your day, folks, and enjoy the championship.
Hell breezy. Let me show you how to keep the dice rolling when you're doing that thing over there. Hey. Let's go! Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause I gotta win every day. Go! See, they really wanna pop me. Go! Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. Go! You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come a nigga gotta set it, then I gotta go and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing a nigga think that he be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna dead it. Then I'm gonna murder everything and anything about it. Boom, about a bing. I gotta do a lot of things to make it clearer to a couple niggas that I always win, and then I gotta get it again and again and again. And I be doing it to death, and now I move a little foul. Nigga better call a rap, and everybody know my style. Niggas know that I'm the best when it comes to doing this, and I be banging on my chest, and I bang in the east, and I banging in the west, and I come to give you more, and I will never give you less. You will hear it in the street, and you can read it in the press. Do you really wanna know what's next? Let's go. See the way we on it, and we all up in the race, and you know we gotta go now try to keep up with the pace, and we struggling and hustling and set it in again.